Jesus said, "Man cannot live on bread alone, but from every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." You're listening to Daily Truth.
An ecclesiocracy is a conflation of two independent, autonomous, sovereign spheres, namely church and state. Ecclesiocracy seeks to blend those two, conflate them together. That is not biblical. That's not what anyone is arguing for. An ecclesiocracy would be a church-run state. A theocracy is a God-run state. Separation of church and state, amen. The scepter was given to Judah and the priesthood to Levi. Even in the first book of the Bible, we see God separating, designating separately these duties of church and state. Civil rulership, Judah, the scepter given to them, and the priestly functions, the church, given to Levi. The separation of church and state is perfectly biblical, and I advocate for it strongly. But brothers and sisters, there is night and day difference between the separation of church and state and the separation of Christ and state. Every state, every nation, every government is theocratic. Ecclesiocracy, no thank you. No Protestant pope. Theocracy, it's not whether but which. You have no choice in the matter. It will be theocratic. Our nation has a God. And the particular God that we have, with whatever God you have, that God will have a corresponding orthodoxy. And anything outside of that orthodoxy, which is set by your God, anything outside of that is what you would consider blasphemy. So there are certain things you cannot say because it's not keeping in step with the reigning orthodoxy, which has been set by that nation's designated God. Not whether, but which. They have a God. Now, with that, not only does the God then dictate orthodoxy, everything outside of that being blasphemy, but also all religions, and atheism is a religion, secular humanism is a religion, Darwinism is a religion, and it takes far more nonsensical, illogical faith to believe those false religions than it does to believe the true Christian religion. But every religion, not only does it have a God, an orthodoxy, outside of orthodoxy, therefore being blasphemy, but they also have sacraments. Our nation currently, the sacraments is the blood of babies, and the murder of 65 million plus children, and it's far more than that. And another sacrament is the sexual revolution, perversion. Now, we often make the correlation with Planned Parenthood to Molech, a false god, child sacrifice. But another correlation that's a helpful one that Gerhardus Voss talks about is the Asherah poles. Molech, child sacrifice, think abortion. The Asherah poles were once fruitful trees. Trees have branches. But the Asherah poles were stripped of their branches down to a naked, bare pole. The branches and their ability to be fruitful is dismantled. They become lifeless, fruitless, androgynous. Molech, abortion. Asherah, transgenderism. Sexual mutilation. All fruitfulness ripped away. A shell of a person. A pole where a tree once stood. We have sacraments, not whether but which. We have orthodoxy, not whether but which. We have blasphemy laws, not whether but which. Because we have a God. Not just a private God for private individuals in their private lives. But there is always a public God of every public nation. They're all theocratic. Not whether, but which. Greg Bonson had an old speech. And a portion of that, about 2.5 minutes long, has circulated and gone viral on the internet several times over the last few decades. But it's him responding to Westminster Escondido, which is a Presbyterian seminary known for their radical two-kingdom theology, very pietistic. Everything is private, no public Christianity. And he's responding to them right after they tried to essentially silence him and fire him and remove him and dismiss him and humiliate him for his stance on Christian ethics, general equity theonomy. Theonomy simply being a word for God's law. And in this clip, I can't repeat it for you verbatim, but essentially what he says is this. He says, we have millions of children being murdered in the womb. And you're concerned about theonomy? You have to lock your windows at night. And you're concerned about theonomy? Children are being shot in schools. And you're worried about theonomy? Sodomy is being publicly praised in the streets of our nation, and you're concerned and worried about theonomy. Brothers and sisters, this was 20, 30 years ago. What do you think Bonson would say today? Do you know why churches like ours are growing? Do you know why people signed up and sold out 6 months in advance the Theonomy and Postmillennialism conference? Do you know why Christian nationalism was trending on Google 2 days ago? Partly because of my Twitter account. That's part of it. I certainly helped to get into that spot. But beyond just my own personal obsession, you know why these things are on the rise? People are considering because the world has gone insane.